Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lion's Den. Today we speak with Cosimo Spera, who is the CEO of Minerva CQ. Now, that's a company that uses large language models and AI in order to deliver a software tool that can allow customer service reps and salespeople on the phone to have better, more informed conversations. Now, we talk a lot about AI in general. It's a really fun conversation, but specifically, if you're out there wondering, how can people use these large language models, ChatGPT, et cetera, how can we use these and build off of them to create our own sorts of AI that's like better tailored to very specific tasks? And he walks us through exactly how you do that. And so this is a really valuable conversation. Check it out.
So, Cosmo, really glad to have you here in the Lion's Den today because there's obviously AI is like this major buzzword. Everybody's talking about it. There's a million companies that are springing up, based around AI and ChatGPT and large language models and all this stuff. So, I definitely want to talk about that and talk about your company where you leverage AI for a specific purpose, which I think is like customer service, customer support type of stuff. We'll dive into that. But first, I would love to get a little bit of your background. Before you did this, I understand you were a professor for a while. Is that right?
That is correct. So I was in academia before, as people could say, I got a real job. So I was a professor. I spent some time in some leading U.S. university and also internationally. So I was professor at Columbia, Michigan, UC Berkeley, and also went back to teach to my alma mater, which is University of Siena in Italy.
Oh, okay. And what were you teaching at these universities?
Uh, my area of expertise has been in applied mathematics in a field that goes under the name of operation research, which basically study multiple elements that goes from the use of discrete mathematics, combinatorial problems, nonlinear optimization, which today is the foundations behind, any large language model. And few others, predictive models, queuing theory, and so on. So I think today that a degree in OR it gives you a great opportunities to be able to be on the front end of the AI race. So if you are a mathematician and if you are somebody who had a degree in operations research, more than a degree in computer science, that's of course is my bias. I think you have much better understanding of what really is going on, from a theoretical standpoint behind, the AI, the AI tools that are available in the market today.
Got it. Okay. All right. So you were a professor for a while. I think you told me earlier, a little over a decade, and then you started to branch out into entrepreneurship. Is that right?
Correct. And I have to basically, if I have to thank somebody for this shift, or if I have to blame somebody for this shift, really, it's Scott McNeely. At that time, Scott was the CEO of Sun Microsystem. I had to build a system that was using Java, using the compiler 0.4. I presented this at a conference. Somebody from Sun helped to know, so they contact me. We had at UC Berkeley the first Java day. And after that, I helped Sun Microsystems to basically build something internally in Java to manage their supply chain, in order for them to go to the outside world and say, okay, here's Java, it's a secure, a framework on which you can build the serious applications. And that ended up to be the genesis of my first company. And then I had to make a switch from academia, to be an entrepreneur, which I don't regret, by the way.
You don't regret. Okay. So yeah, that was my next question because they're very different worlds, very different lifestyles. So what was it about entrepreneurship that you realized you wanted to stick with it?
So I think that the difference between being a professor that focused on research or be an entrepreneur that focused on advance the research is the fact that now you are applying into a given context what you need to study. The shortcoming of this, that your work tended up to remain secret because you don't want to give away, your secret sauce to other people, to copy you or even to leapfrog you. But in a certain sense, I see many similarities because I still like to work with young students or graduates that wants to push the envelope, in the field where we are focusing on. And that's what happened with me at Minerva. I have a team of very brilliant data scientists with whom I work on a daily basis, really to understand how we're going to do things better than other people are doing.
Yeah. Okay. With the before we get to Minerva, I want to talk about that in a second. I'm curious about the supply chain startup. So the first one that you jumped into, and I think you told me earlier I think you did another supply chain startup. So were you sort of like applying mathematics to supply chain in a way so that, users and operators of a supply chain could sort of like optimize the way they build it and the way they send goods to different stages in the supply chain?
So if I have to do something, we actually invented and creating a new category, which was called supply chain event management. So we were instrumental to change the paradigm of how supply chain operates from a centralized systems into a decentralized framework. So before, any planning system that has been built was built from a centralized perspective. We came with these notions that there are multiple supply chains that interconnect because you don't only have one single suppliers, you have multiple suppliers, and those multiple suppliers are also serving your competitors and so on. So the idea for us was, why we don't move from a way of decentralizing the solutions more than centralizing, and make the supply chain a little bit more flexible, and then build the framework that would have operate in this decentralized notion. In a certain sense, you can tell from my accent, and I'm Italian, and I love the Roman history, and Roman conquered the world because they apply these notions on the battlefield of divide and conquer. And this is something that always has been in my professional career. How you take a complex problem, you break down in a way that you can craft the solutions, and you break down in multiple problems that you can solve concurrently and then put the pieces together. So some sort, I'm always been a fan of decentralized concurrent solutions more than a major centralized framework that tries to basically provide an holistic view to everybody.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's shift to AI. So obviously AI came on the scene, and I guess there have been many different like forms of AI, and people have called different things AI over the years. But I guess what I'm talking about is really like the large language model, sort of this newest wave of AI that came around, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago or something. I think a lot of people are curious. I myself am curious. I'm sort of like waiting on the sidelines for some sort of application to be really useful or really like valuable or something like that. Of course, I use ChatGPT. It helps me ideate. It helps me edit. I mean, there's all sorts of things that it helps with. But what are some of the like actual applications into somebody's like work life? What are some of the products that are out there? What are some of the real good applications for large language models at this time, aside from just like being my assistant who I can ask questions to?
So I would say that one of the success story of the applications of AI is in the field of contact center, right? How you can support customer service. Now, there are multiple schools of thoughts around this. And the school of thoughts are, humans will be fully, replaced because AI, can automate any single task that human today are doing in a customer service operations, on a customer sales operations. That's one school of thought, and people, are focusing how we're going to build, agentic AI. And the notions of agentic AI, it's an intelligent agent who has decisions capabilities and eventually could evolve the decision process and take autonomous decision. I have a different approach to this. I think that that we need, and I just wrote a paper which is actually on LinkedIn on how we're going to transition from human in the loop AI systems to AI first with human guidance. And at this point, I want to stress one thing. There has been some significant controversy about the recent claim that the Apple research team had placed out like a week ago, saying, those large language model, what are capable to do are capable to imitate and at the best do a better pattern recognition, but they are not able to reason. And they gave a set of examples where any sophisticated model that had been claimed to have some reasoning capabilities failed. I tend to be on this side. I tend to be that AI today, just to mention Chomsky, it's an incredible intelligent parrot. So it's able to repeat and do things that has been seen, but it's not able to have autonomous reasoning into this. And that's why, the original AI, the one to be invented by Minsky, had hit a brick wall, during in the late 80s and was replaced by machine learning. So having said this, I do believe that humans plays an immense part of making this AI systems to be better over time. And don't forget one thing. Each time you are calling your assistant, you are using and powering most likely a 70 billion hyperparameters model, which is consuming energy. At a given point, this will not be sustainable because we do not have enough energy productions, to support, the computer power that needs to be, in place in order to support the request. So, so we need also to be smart. Can we create a sustainable AI as well? And what is sustainable AI? I'm not talking about, the ethical, aspects of AI and everything. This I leave to the others. I'm from a research perspective. I'm thinking about, how many times I need to query a large language model to get an answers, and if I'm able to validate the answers, can I store these answers in a way that it can be reused? And that's to me is the key elements here. And who is able to validate the answers in the customer service? The validations of the answers can only be given by people who have some expertise. Don't forget about large language model. Can hallucinate, but most important, large language model are very ill conditioned, which means that if you are slightly changing the input, you might have a large change in the output. And my favorite example is this. You ask ChatGPT today, help me how to make an espresso, or show me how to make an espresso. Semantically, you are asking the same thing, but you get two different answers. In fact, if you say, show me how to make an espresso, you're starting to see images that are coming out. Right? What you really are, you probably by saying, hey, help me to make an espresso, show you how to make an espresso, you mean the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, so this really goes to the fact that not everybody knows about the ill conditioning of large language model. Now, if you are bringing this into the context of customer service, what is one thing that you are requiring in customer service is uniformity of the answers. What is the frustration for the customers? when you have to call, you basically you are calling once and you say something, and you're calling, and you probably not get resolved, but you get an answers, and then you call another time and you say the same thing and you get a different type of answers, and that is really frustration. So uniformity of the answers, uniformity of the process is the key, in customer service. And I think that what we are doing at Minerva is to basically, through this element of verifications of the answers and how we post-process the request, we would like to generate those type of uniformity, and we'd like to basically create answers that are viable and sustainable, and most of us are usable without to be regenerated.
Okay. So how are you doing that? It's basically you have like an agentic AI, but then as you get good answers, you save them somewhere and ask the AI to repeat those?
Exactly. So what we're doing, we understand. So we are really focusing on conversation that are happening, on the voice. I think that the futures of AI, it's through the voice, not through the digital channels. So the digital as simple, but you want to use the voice to access the digital channels. You see, you are, in your, automotive, you are, activating your entertainment system through the voice. In ChatGPT, you talk through the voice, and you get the transcription. So there's conversations, of course, between the customers and a customer service representative. We analyze in real time what is the context, and we extract what is the questions that the customer is asking in an explicit or implicit way. Because you can ask questions, but you don't ask questions in a direct way, right? You can ask questions indirectly. So at that point, we are sending those questions to a broker. Right? So we have a broker, and this broker say, hey, I have seen these questions before, and I can point it out where this question is, or I've not seen these questions before. Then I'm going to call, a RAG, which is a retrieval augmented generations model that we built by injecting the knowledge base of the customers on the top of the LLM, and generates the answer from this. Once the answer has been generated, if the answers has been used partially or fully by the system, we can understand the quality of the answers and store. Now, these answers might have some level of personalizations, and I'll give you an example. And this is an example, for one of my customers. Somebody calls the customer service of a company that is our customers, and says, "Hey, I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I just bought a Ford Lightning, and I was worried because I read that EV charger, home charger, do not work well on altitude and in temperature. If I can buy your EV charger." And the system comes back and says, yes, you can buy your EV charger because our EV chargers works up to 6,600 feet of elevations, and Flagstaff is at 6,000 feet, and works between this temperature of minus 20 Fahrenheit, plus 150 Fahrenheit. And the temperature in Flagstaff in the past 10 years has never been between less than minus 5 Fahrenheit, plus 120 Fahrenheit. Okay? So the answer is yes. Now, you see these answers, our system, what it does, it use some sort of post-processing analysis and identify that there is a relationship that occurs between the location, the altitude, and the temperature, and build, that, and extract that relationship, and builds on the top of that relationship what we called a first of order logic predicate. Okay. Something now that I can generalize. So I have a location which is called X, and if somebody calls, from Park City, or somebody calls from Denver, or somebody calls from Cortina d'Ampezzo in Italy, or from Chamonix in France, I don't have to regenerate the answers. I simply have to say, okay, where is the locations, what is the altitude, and what has been the temperature? which is information that I can retrieve easily from a database where I can store that information. And now I have an answer that is valid, that I can reuse multiple times, and maybe like 100 times. And think about how much money I save, and I generate a consistency in the reply. Right? So now that answers it's valid, if you call, and it's the same answers, that I'm giving to everybody who was calling for a similar type of inquiries.
Yeah. You mentioned you save money. How does the money savings happen?
Because each time you're firing a large language model, you have to pay something.
Oh, okay.
Think about you send some tokens into this and you pay something. But if those things have been saved into a database of verified answers, the only thing I have to do is access the database of verified answers. First of all, the speed on which you can access a database of verified answers is much faster, and the cost is almost non-existent because it's stored somewhere. It's just a storage cost, which is close to nil. But in the case I have to send a token, and I'm repeating the questions multiple times, and I pay for something that I don't need to pay.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. But I guess the model would still have to query the internet to find out their location, the altitude, and the temperature.
Correct.
Right?
But if you can have this into a database, basically, you can make the query once, and you can pull the location of basically it's a very simple thing. But one thing is to query and get the information about temperature. You can access you can access app that provides you the weather app that provides you history of this, and you can download that information. And the same thing about the locations. You can basically download the information that keeps all the locations from all the cities that you are doing. But as I say, it's like this is a completely different approach than throwing a set of tokens into a large language model and generate the answers.
Yeah, and the uniformity thing is key, because I could imagine that specific question that you said, which is a very long, sort of subjective question. ChatGPT would give you a different answer every day of the week if you asked that same question.
Correct.
Like
Correct.
Totally different reasoning and conclusions and everything. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and so then you're sort of like building this massive database of very common customer questions, which I guess you kind of referred to as like the knowledge base, right? So you're sort of building this knowledge based database on top of an LLM.
We basically are building a set of verified questions. Now, the set of verified questions also have some particular features that we can extract, right? How those answers are connected. So if this is an answer connected, which means like in a conversation, generally, you can anticipate the steps. Now, in order for us to be very effective, what we can do, we can determine what is the correlation that exists from, one questions and the post-sequence questions that people might ask, and speed up the process by caching any type of subsequent questions that the customers, might have, into the cache. So we speed up the type of service, and will make the experience much pleasant, because now there is no delay in the response.
Got it. Okay. So I want to circle back real quick. I think a little bit earlier you mentioned the sort of the idea of like fully agentic AI, right? So it's like the customer is just talking to an AI directly. Is that what you guys are doing at Minerva CQ, or are you like human assisted agents?
So we are, and thank you for stressing this. We are a human assisted agent, but we do believe that there is a transformational path on how to get from a human assisted agent to AI first with human guidance. Right, where the human becomes the supervisor. So the question is, we still believe that agentic AI, because of limitations in reasoning of those AI tools, until we have overcome that type of reasoning still will need a human guidance and a supervisions to put constraints, and verify that some of the answers are correct. And I'm not here talking about things that have to do with how access your internet, and my internet is down, but think about in terms of telemedicine, in terms of healthcare systems, in terms of legal systems, right? Where there might be, if you are providing answers that have no guidance, that you might create, element of significant, significant impact in a negative way, right? So this is so. If I'm basically, if I'm, you telling me, okay, help me to understand what is my best healthcare plan, and here is like my instruments. You want somebody that basically verify that what the answer comes out is an answer correct, because tomorrow morning, if your premium go and skyrocket, and you say, well, I asked for something that would have be a copay of $20, and the copay is $100, that obviously I'm making the customers unhappy. Not to mention, so if I do something that might be more impactful in the life of the customer.
True. Okay. So the way that Minerva CQ works right now, so this is like, your customers are call centers of different companies, right? It's like customer service teams of different companies. And I'm assuming they're sort of like taking calls from their customers, and they have like Minerva CQ up on their computer, and it's sort of like suggesting things that they should say. Is that how it's working right now?
Correct. Basically, comes the suggestions, comes the suggestions. We also have an orchestrator systems that understand by the context, where the information resides in internal systems of the enterprise. Like if you are questioning, and if you are calling in and says, "Hey, my bill is incorrect," right? Your bill is incorrect. Why my energy bills went from $50 to $200? Then that you have to go and pull from the billing system. You have to pull at least like some sort of 10 or 12 previous bills, because people is not only says why my bill is $200, but why my bill went from $50 to $200. So it also tells you like what type of information you need to pull from the screen, what type of questions he is asking, and what is the resolutions, and what you have to tell them. And eventually the system comes back and to says, hey, I can see your consumptions. You have a variable plan on your energy tanks, so you exceed your variable plan, and when you exceed your variable, so your the plan, and there was a spike in the energy because it was due on a significant heat wave that was, or a cold wave that occurs, and that's why your bill is this much. And then making a suggestions on how if he had had a fixed plan or something, it would have had a different impact, right? And then making to say, hey, I'm looking at what is your bill, and here is what I do recommend for you in moving forward, so you can stabilize your cost, and you will not have those type of spikes in the billing.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. So then in the future, where Minerva CQ is headed, where you're talking about like almost entirely AI driven, but the human is the supervisor, how would that be? Would they still have it up on their screen, and they can just the human can just kind of see the whole conversation happening, and they interject?
You can see the conversations happen. You can see where technically, you will have some sort of alert, on the screen, where it basically says, and the alert might be on a color scheme where you can say, okay, this is like, it's not really, it's an alert, but you don't need to do anything. I just want to communicate here. Or here is an alert where I need some interventions here. Or this is an alert where I need to take over from me because I can't answer. So I don't have the capability to basically to answer this type of inquiries that the customers is saying.
Okay. And so right now, the way that it's set up right now, where it's the agent is assisting the human, it's still the human is on a one-to-one phone call. And in the future,
Correct.
you're thinking the human could sort of be supervising multiple AI conversations and just jump in where
Correct.
they need. Okay.
Correct.
Interesting. How far do you think we are from that?
I think we are probably 3 years before we can get to the system. And remember, like in order for you to get to the systems, you need the data.
Yeah.
This is not. It's not that AI tools might be there as a say. There is some element of reasoning, but you can
Yeah.
overcome. You can overcome this element of reasoning by applying the type of techniques that I have explained to you, where you can build some reasoning on the top of this within a given domain and context. But we still needs the data and captures the data that will allow us to be able to create this agentic and AI first systems with human oversight. I mean, I call some sort of a human oversight, right? And of course, a human oversight, can supervise, a multitude of agentic systems.
Got it. Awesome. Well, I want to wrap things up here. Cosimo, thank you very much for coming on here. I learned a ton. If people want to learn more, where should they come find you? Should they come to the website?
The website, it's minervacq.com. And I just want to know your last name. It's Italian, so I'm going to give you a little bit of Minerva. We call the company Minerva because Minerva is the goddess of knowledge for the Romans. And CQ stands for collaborative intelligence. And the questions was, we want to build the systems that we had make the humans and the machines to be able to work together.
I love it. That's awesome.
And my email, it's Cosimo, Cosimo, at minervacq.com.
Perfect. Well, we will link to those in the show notes. And thank you again for joining me in the Lion's Den.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Really, it's really appreciated.